Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and hermaphrodites. My fellow slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but so much worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child trafficking Satanists. It's Vinny's jokes.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another exciting episode of the Vinny Eastwood Show, broadcasting live on Kiwi Radio and Freedom Hub New Zealand Radio, as well as the Restored Connection. Thank you, Mr. France, for this. I was talking with Chris France, one of the tech guys behind the scenes at Ground Zero Radio, and mate, I am always astounded on this network, the people that they bring in. You know, I was talking with a fellow show host, Chris Masters, and I said to him, "Hey, dude, you should do an anarchy podcast. It could be called Masters but No Slaves." Anyway, my very special guest joining me today is the lovely Nigel Gray. Thank you very much for joining us today, sir. And for those of you listening in live, bear in mind we are alive on Twitch at Vinny Eastwood, and as well as YouTube and the wonderful Meta-controlled Foshbork. I wonder if I'm going to actually continue broadcasting on Foshbork and just switch to Rumble soon enough. But anyway, bear in mind that this is a listener-supported broadcast, so if you do want to continue hearing this show, the show needs your help to continue. There's been a major revenue gap and things of that nature, so we're needing to raise about an extra $40 a month. So if you are capable, please go to thevinnieeastwoodshow.com, sign up as a Patreon for a regular $5 a month, or perhaps through PayPal, or if you are in New Zealand, the Kiwi Bank details are there on the homepage of the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Reopen.nz and HoldenHealthcare.com, respectively. So, Nigel, give us a little bit of a rundown about who you are and what it is you do.
I'm just a regular New Zealander, I guess, but I have been, over the years, over the last, 10, 14 years or so, been following and studying into geoengineering, what you call geoengineering, and I have a background also in detoxification technology. So from that angle, I have a deep understanding of the effects that it can have physically, mentally, and I guess on the environment as well.
So we're talking about ostensibly the engineering of the planet, the very definition, geoengineering. But it's not just engineering the climate and the weather and things of that nature. We're also talking about engineering the soil, loading it up with particulates and things of that nature, which may make certain crops not grow, while other crops that are perhaps genetically engineered to grow under those adverse conditions, controlled by major mega corporations. So when we talk about geoengineering, it's engineering the world in a particular way for a particular reason. Do you think that what is the actual reason to your mind to unleash this much chemical, biological, and technological destruction upon this planet?
That is a very big question that is not easily answered, except, let me put it this way, the subject itself, geoengineering, covers such a wide array of sub-subjects that you can talk about this thing for hours, because there are so many nuances of, we can go into directed energy weapons, we can go into the what you were talking about, the soil impact, we can go into forest fires and what's happening with that, and then there is also the electromagnetic sort of frequency aspect to this, which is also a huge subject in itself.
I thought that was quite an interesting one. Was who did I get on the show? I think I had somebody talking about Morgellons disease. They had these fibrous growths coming out of their arms and so on and so forth, and as well as terrible side effects. And somebody postulated a theory that they're putting self-replicating nanotechnology into the stratospheric geoengineering streams, which are commonly known as chemtrails. Somebody told me, Vinny, you can't call them chemtrails, and go, really, what do you call the trail of chemicals? But anyway, they're putting self-replicating, this is a theory, by the way, I haven't actually confirmed this, nanotechnology that's able to grow down and through your entire nervous system, ostensibly creating a dual nervous system within the human body that is capable of receiving instruction and radio signals and things of that nature. Have you heard of this? Does that have any legitimacy?
I have heard of it. I'm not going to say legitimate, illegitimate, or however. The point is that if people can be aware of these things, then definitely there's something there. You can't, if something can be sensed, then obviously there's something to sense. So, it's not just all made up, because there are numbers of people who are picking up on this. By the way, my main purpose in this whole subject, if you like, is to raise awareness, and I don't always get into the details of like Morgellons disease or idiosyncrasies of particular parts. What I say is, okay, this is possible. You go do the looking now. You do the research, because all I'm trying to do is wake people up so they start looking, and then they can look a lot further.
How did that work for you? How did you, quote unquote, wake up? Was it because somebody was like telling you about this stuff and the penny dropped?
I'll give you the simple and boring answer. I was painting in Auckland, painting houses, and I needed to know what the weather was. I went onto the Met Service weather pages and so forth on Facebook, and asked questions about some of the things I was seeing on the radar, and said, what about this? What about that? And they started, basically they were mocking me online on my questions, and I thought, this is weird. Why would you even bother mocking it? I just wanted an answer, and nobody was giving me a straight answer, and that made me a little bit more determined to find some answers, and it kind of went from there. Simple as that.
And how far has this journey gone for you? Like, how long ago was that?
Wow, probably about 2012. So you get some idea. Now, in 2016, I saw a lot of what I would call electromagnetic frequencies on the Met Service radars. And there was a full moon coming up, and I said, hey, I think there's going to be an earthquake, because this is one of the things that can be done with geoengineering. And so I said that, and 7 days later, I gave a window of about 7 days, right on the nail. There was the Kaikoura earthquake, and my prediction, if you like, made international headlines, and created a whole lot of media, just crazy. And I had 13,000 people join my group just like that, just straight within about 3 days.
And what's your ongoing work concerning? You're doing weather reports, predictions, things of that nature, perhaps earthquake predictions?
But I only predict something if I see that something's going to happen, and I go, okay, but if nothing is obvious to me, then I'm not going to go out and say, on a limb and say, well, this is going to happen. I say, okay, it looks like something might happen, but I'm not going to, say something that I don't know is really there. So that's how it goes. So.
And I remember when I first heard about chemtrails and things of that nature, I was like, okay, right, cool. And then you start to realise that, it actually does have a lot of evidence. It actually is real. They definitely are covering it up. The question is, what are they doing? So, in layman's terms, we're talking about a jet that is possibly drone-operated, possibly not, giving a fuel tank of some description that is full of these nano-reflective particles, right? Things like barium, strontium, things like that, and they are spraying them across the sky in grid board patterns. If you happen to be living in a NATO country, bear in mind New Zealand joined NATO. I don't know how far away we are from the North Atlantic, but we joined it nonetheless, and it happens to be happening in those countries in particular far more than others. So this makes it a global effort to one degree or another. In New Zealand, not that much air traffic, so we don't have grid patterns generally speaking, but in places like London or Paris or whatever, they're everywhere. They're all the time, and the people living under them, they don't see the shapes of clouds and things anymore. It's like, that one looks like a long piece of string. That one looks like Pinocchio's nose is growing. That one looks like a branch. It's just, it all looks the same, and it turns into this freaking big milky haze. And apparently the reason for this is to reflect sunlight away in order to cool the planet. That's the official story, at least as we've seen it. But, of course, how could so many people be involved without anybody blowing the whistle on it, Vinny? It's like, well, people have blown the whistle, and then they've wound up dead. That's what happens when conspiracies are going on. There's denial, there's disinformation, there's misinformation, there's whistleblowers who get taken out. This is how you can keep the public guessing and having a relative uncertainty, more to the point, confusion about things. Confusion is how things work, specifically in terms of how intelligence agencies cover things up. They don't have to convince you that their lie is true. They just have to convince you that it's too hard for you to figure out on your own, and so you may as well just trust them.
Sure. Look, if you don't mind, what I'd like to explain is a little bit about that. And going back to you asked me, and I didn't answer the question, which was, why are they doing this? Why do I think they're doing it? You touched on the solar management, solar radiation management, where they reflect it back. But most people, when they see chemtrails, they say, cloud seeding. Now, that term in itself is very, very rarely, if ever, what you are seeing when you look at a chemtrail. And I'll explain why. Cloud seeding is the process of seeding a cloud so that it will rain, and it was done, is still done, using mainly silver iodide to drop over the clouds, and so that the moisture in the cloud will then coagulate, and basically you'll get rain, right? Now, that is not what you see when you see a chemtrail going across a clear sky. That is not cloud seeding, because there are no clouds. So, what is it? Well, okay. Now, this is where we get into the what are they doing and so forth, and the solar radiation management, which is the creation of cloud to provide cloud cover to supposedly reflect the sunlight back up and so that we don't all get fried to a frizzle. Now, the question is, do they know something? And I'm not even answering all these questions, I'm asking the questions, but is it possible that these chemtrails are being done to protect us rather than to hurt us? That it's just a question that I throw out there, because we all assume that it's being done to destroy Earth. There is that possibility that it's being done to save the Earth. And I'm not saying that is what it is, right? I'm just saying that is a possibility. And you can't just fixedly go looking at one thing without looking at the whole picture. So here's the thing, is what you'll see is that when you see chemtrails go across a clear sky, which is what we frequently see, and then it fans out into cloud and it becomes cloud, what you're seeing is the dropping of those chemicals, as you said. Aluminium is a big one, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, graphene oxide, surfactants, which is basically soap to actually hold it all together, and another one is lithium, which by the way is also known as a psychiatric drug for calming people. Interesting, huh? So that'll charge your batteries, ladies and gentlemen. You're getting psychiatric treatment without even knowing about it, and you are breathing in all of these things. Now, there's another interesting thing I looked at, which is the possibility that, or how would I say, not possibility, but you breathe in all these metals, which now makes you traceable as a moving particle, a human, that can be tracked by satellite. And there has been work being done over the years to 3D image the planet and everything on it, including life force, right? Now, why would you do that? Well, bring out the science fiction fans. If you could track humans, you would have complete Orwellian control of the planet, because even if a person went into hiding, they could be tracked because they have all these nanometals making them traceable.
Well, I actually had a listener call me and tell me that his friend had a Bluetooth signature. Like they were in the middle of nowhere with absolutely no reception. His friend didn't have a phone, and my friend found a Bluetooth connection, and it was his friend's. Like he was actually transmitting a Bluetooth signal that could be picked up and sent signals to, but perhaps even radio controlled. One day, everybody just like whoop. And Michael Jackson's Thriller starts playing. Everybody does the moves. It would be an interesting thing to see, perhaps in a filmic version. But of course, in reality, there's a number of other elements that are at play with human consciousness. Can you project an artificial reality through that Bluetooth system, so that if people could be perhaps concerned about homeless people that are dead in the street having vomited up blood because they've got too much strontium in their esophagus or something of that nature, but you could actually project an image of to somebody so that they're just like, oh, there's a flower bed in the middle of the road, let's just carefully step over that, don't want to hurt the flowers. It's just, the mind reels at the possibilities that we come to, because new technology has not been around for too long and people don't know what it's actually capable of.
You nailed it there. There's an old movie, what was it, about 1985 or something like that, called Dark City, which is a really good one, where the whole city is dark all the time, and people at midnight, they shift everything around. They shift the city around, and people get reassigned as different personalities, and you might get a different wife or a different husband or whatever. And then they sort of turn it all back on, everyone wakes up and carries on. But the funny thing is that all of this is almost possible even at this moment in time.
Yeah, they don't release, too much information and all that. And more to the point, a good section of the population, for example, if you look at a website and it's very, very intuitive, it's very obvious, this is the play button for the radio station, this is where the archives are, la, 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 la. They've already put some thought into that in order to make it user-friendly, make it accessible. But when it comes to the deep headiness, scholarly white papers and things of that nature, those are not made for the consumption of the general audience. The average IQ of New Zealand is approximately 96.5 at this point. A chimpanzee is 85, and approximately half the population is lower than 96.5. Okay? So the possibility that people would even be intelligent enough to even figure anything out on their own, even if they were told and directed like a child how to do it, right? We're pushing against walls of water here with a bucket.
Look, it's just fascinating. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is what is called ice nucleation. And not many people, even in the geoengineering field, people who are interested, have been familiar with this term. I have made it familiar because I keep repeating this. But ice nucleation is a process, a chemical process where water, a chemical sets off a chain reaction with water particles, and essentially what you got is an automatic cloud maker just using a chemical drop. So you can drop chemicals in an area and then get this chain reaction like a nuclear reaction, but it's not a nuclear bomb, it's actually just water or cloud. And I have seen this on the radars coming from a single point. So you see on the radars, and you can see this regularly on Met Service and other radars, you can see this ice nucleation where cloud is suddenly emanating from a single point. Now, I recently went on to AI and posed the question of about this ice nucleation, and said, is it possible that this could be done from a single point? And while it can be done naturally, it's not that common that you would just see it as often as we're seeing it. Dust particles could create an ice nucleation effect, but also it can be done to, as I say, it can be done synthetically or man-made to create cloud. And why I bring that up is that off the coast of Queensland, I regularly see ice nucleation taking place in the Tasman or over the Tasman. And then that cloud comes down and covers New Zealand. And this just happens week after week after week. And sometimes I can see 4 or 5 of those ice nucleations, single points, start simultaneously. In other words, at the same moment, they all start fanning out cloud from single points, from 5 different points or 3 different points or something like that. And this sort of kind of gets rid of the idea that this could be just all coincidence and natural and so forth. That we've seen too much of this to think it's just coincidence.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I believe that there's not many people who understand what coincidence is. They're kind of like coincidence theorists, that they think that there's no such thing as planning, there's no such thing as mechanics, A leads to B leads to C. They just think that everything randomly groups together, right? And this is what's difficult when you're trying to explain to people complex systems that have seemingly contradictory moving parts that are involved in the process. They just don't understand the mechanism by how things work. And this is why they just switch off.
Absolutely. Now, there are numerous patents on the subject of geoengineering and weather modification. There's also an old US military document that was written called Weather Warfare. Geez, I'm controlling the weather. Oh, geez, I haven't got the wording for it. Controlling for the weather for 2025, and a few people will know what I'm talking about. I can actually post a link or something if anyone wants to find out more from me. But in that document, it talks about the use of controlling weather to control economic outcomes and possibly for military use against a country, like floods, famines, this kind of thing. And then using the technology, they can feed that information. In other words, pre-plan what they're going to do, feed it to the news sources, the Met services around the world, and have them post it as a forecast. So you go, wow, it's going to be a storm next week. And they forecasted it, when in actual fact it's not a forecast, it's actually them telling you what they're going to do.
That's one of the occult principles, actually. You know, it says like the bad guys have to tell you what they're going to do. You know, I'm going to rape your wife. What are you going to do about it? That kind of thing. And they have to give you some kind of a chance, allegedly, or whatever. Sort of like how in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, hey, hold on a second, how come you're bulldozing my house? Oh, we put a notice up. Yeah, but that notice was underground, behind a shelf. You know, they keep things from you so that it's not easy to find, but if you did want to find it, you could, and so therefore they think this is good enough warning. It's far from transparent, it's far from honest, but at least there is a principle of some nature to it. Now, when we're talking to the general public, if we're talking about geoengineering, climate control, things of that nature, controlling the weather by 2025, I think might be the document you were talking about. And this idea behind controlling the weather is about drought control and flood control and storm control, not for the purposes of preventing drought, not for the purposes of preventing storms, but for the purposes of directing them to apply what would be seen as supernatural pressure to national areas, right? Okay, look, we've got all these farmers in Australia and we want them on the land in order to get them into the mega cities where they're all going to be surveilled and living in box-like apartments. Okay, why don't we just flood that entire area by siphoning off and directing storm systems towards it? Okay? Things of that nature. So at that point, you have the ability to wage literal war. This is war, okay? They're attacking you. They're destroying your resources. They're killing your people. They're destroying your infrastructure, so on and so forth. But they're doing it with a completely undetectable weapon. All right? Or at least as far as the public perception is concerned. Of course, people like you and I wouldn't have a job if it was completely undetectable. But yes, asymmetric warfare, I think, comes to mind, as well as full spectrum dominance. Not only is your enemy so powerful that you can't stop them, and they've got this gargantuan crap at their disposal, but you can't even get the population to realise that the enemy is there, and they are actually deploying weapons against you and damaging your nation. It's brilliant, really.
Absolutely, and looking at that, we saw that happen with Christchurch earthquake, where there were US officials in Christchurch at the time, and there was an email on Hillary Clinton's email server that I think it was like it was all done successfully, or some sort of phrase like that. Now, coming forward in time, I wanted to mention Cyclone Gabriel, which was actually mentioned that it was going to hit New Zealand prior to it actually forming as a cyclone. A couple of days prior, it had actually started forming, as a system, and they were like, oh yeah, so it's going to form into a cyclone and hit New Zealand. And I'm like, isn't the Coral Sea, like, I actually measured the distance, it's like, I don't know, 1,300 or something like that from New Zealand, off the coast of, northern Australia. And you're like, okay, well, how do they figure it's going to come and hit New Zealand and be a cyclone when it hadn't even formed? And then we get, it comes down and it sits, it comes right down to over the north of the North Island, like just right over the end of the North Island, and it sits here for a couple of days. And I'm kind of thinking in my mind, I'd love to be a fly on the wall of the person organising that, because it'd be like, oh yeah, we've got it sitting over the top of New Zealand. What do you want us to do with it now? And then it just rolls down, and it goes straight into Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty, Gisborne and Wairoa and so forth. Bam, and it hits. Now, we're coming forward in time. We see Cyclone Alfred over in Australia, and what does it do? It rolls down the coast, and it stops off the coast of Brisbane, like, yep, we've got it there, right? Sits there for a couple of days, and then what happens from there? Now, there's a couple of interesting things that I saw on this, and I've got it recorded on video, right? Is that we see the eye of the cyclone there, and suddenly it all disappears, and what do we see? Ice nucleation coming out there, right? So what they've done is it sort of was breaking up or something, but they did another thing to it. They activated it and got it going again. And they got this new ice nucleation happening. Now, all of the ice nucleation, all of that cloud has channeled down and is actually the weather that we've got over the North Island at the moment. That has come from Cyclone Alfred. Now, how does that happen when the cyclone's still going and we're already getting the effects here? Okay, now, so it stops there for a few days, and tomorrow morning it's supposed to go 90 degrees, comes down the coast and turns 90 degrees and goes into Brisbane. Like, oh yeah, we come in, we're going to, the cyclone's going to, watch a couple of shows, we'll go to a couple of movies, and then we'll be off.
I mean, that's a very mysterious cyclone that we're talking about here. I mean, they named it Alfred. Maybe they should have called it Cyclone Batman. So to explain the art of mystique, but so that means the weather systems themselves are completely unreliable, and I'm wondering, because we had, I think, around about 3 years of straight bad weather in New Zealand up until this summer. Okay, this summer was like a normal New Zealand summer. You know, it's hot, it's sweaty, it's full of New Zealanders. Not a great place to be. But the thing is, we also had to deal with 3 years of like just straight rain. It was crazy, man. Like honestly, one day I was walking down the street in New Lynn by the mall, and I saw a piece of the sidewalk was dry, and I was shocked, Nigel. I was shocked. I hadn't seen a piece of dry sidewalk in years. You know, it was like a leprechaun. Unbelievable. And so I wonder what the other thing is, that the hurricane damage, what was it, Cyclone Gabriel we had here? That was like a mean storm, bro. My son was born in the middle of the aftermath of that. We had water and power out for days. I think something like in the Gisborne region, where we grow the majority of our fruit and vegetables in this country, approximately, what was it, a third or a half of the orchards that were there got destroyed. Now, if you wanted to make countries food dependent and things of that nature, dependent on imports and so on and so forth, what a great idea.
Oh, absolutely. It's just, you know, there are just, as I said, the word coincidence just goes out the door on this, because we see the same thing happen with Gabriel, and then the same thing happen with Alfred like that, where it's just like, you know, it stops, it moves around, and it's like it's being controlled. Well, yes, and there are patents on controlling the movement of hurricanes. Now, that brings up a point, by the way, of you go, well, how do you move a weather system around? Well, I'll tell you, it's easy, right? You use electromagnetic frequencies, and while we don't know all the answers of how they do it, because the technology on this is just incredible, and it's advancing all the time. But here's the thing, is firstly, and this is the main job of those chemtrails. The chemtrail gets dropped. It puts nanometallic particles into the atmosphere, which makes the atmosphere more conductive for electromagnetic frequencies. Now, where are those frequencies coming from? The NEXRAD radars and the specific installations for various purposes around New Zealand, usually weather related, right? And those, because a radar sends out signals, you see, so it's already set up to send out, and so it sends out the electromagnetic frequencies. Now, you've probably heard the term HAARP, High Active
Auroral Research Program.
Program. Okay. Well, that was in Alaska, and people, anytime where they see about this subject, they go, "Oh, HAARP! It was HAARP." You know. Well, okay, but you know what? Technology moves on, and HAARP was actually shifted over to University of Ontario or something like that, university control. But it was started as a military project and had DARPA in there, which is Defence, whatever. The
Defence Advanced Research Project Agency.
There you go. Yeah, that's the one. So they were part of it, and the Navy, I think, was part of it. And so they were using this as the cover for doing upper atmosphere research. Now, getting back to the chemtrails, and you put the electromagnetic frequencies through them, it superheats them, and this is the whole idea with the HAARP system. It heats the atmosphere, so now you've got aluminium particles, barium, strontium, so forth, up in those clouds, and they're getting superheated. Now, what happens when you heat the atmosphere. Heat rises. Heat rises, right? You know, heat goes up. Now, so what happens is the whole atmosphere goes up. And when the atmosphere goes up, it creates a vacuum underneath it. And so it pulls in cold air underneath it. And this is how you move weather fronts around, is you just zap it, and the cold moves from point A to the point just under your electromagnetic frequency zap. And then you zap another area and you move it a little bit further, and so forth. This is a very simple explanation, but you can understand how a weather system could be shifted around simply by heating the atmosphere, have the atmosphere rise up, and it creates a vacuum. The cold air goes underneath, the cold front goes underneath, including the rain or whatever it is that it's holding.
Yeah, literal control of the weather. And I think it's also one of those things to do with global control that is part of the full spectrum dominance program. They'll control the weather, of course they will. They'll control the food, they'll control the water, they'll control the electricity supply, they'll control the oil supply, they'll control politics, they'll control media, you know. And once they've got all of those things stitched up, it doesn't matter what area of expertise you have, they have the ability to just go and bring all those elements into play against your nation or even against an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, when it comes to hurricanes or cyclones, moving them around is probably done a little bit differently than what I just described. However, the one thing to understand is that they know how to do it. And people often say to me, when it comes up to the subject, they say, but where are they doing it from? Where, you know, is this HARP? Is this where is it coming from? You know, we've got to find these places, and I'm like, chill, calm down, because really it doesn't matter a iota. It doesn't matter a rat's ass where it's being done from. Believe me, they can do it, and I think a lot of it right now is being done from satellites, and you know, using the satellites, either beaming the signals up to the satellites and having it triangulate down on a particular location or whatever. You know, the as you say, the control and the ability and technology they have is almost limitless. And you know, there have been billions of dollars. The US used to have, and probably still does, but a black ops budget, a black operations budget. In other words, money that is going to secret projects. Got a bloody mosquito flying around here. And anyway, this money was like literally, you know, maybe 300 billion a year or some at some point. It's gone down a lot, but you've got to wonder where all that money went, because it didn't go on things that we know about. And so where did it go? And you know, they've been putting this technology together for years and years and years. When you've got a long-term program and you just keep putting the money in there on it, do you think there's anything in this world that would be unachievable? I don't.
Yeah, I mean, the limit becomes your imagination to a large degree, and if you're a psychopath, you don't have imagination. So what you do is you find all the people who do have imagination and steal their ideas. You know, I mean, goodness knows how many patents and things of that nature that are currently being used by intelligence agencies, military divisions and things like that somebody had a completely innocuous and genius mind to come up with those things, and maybe they even had a positive intention to them, but just as the psychopathic mind does, it can't create, but it can twist and it can distort. And when people were talking about HARP in New Zealand, it turns out that we actually have a HARP facility in New Zealand called Birdlings Flat, which is not too far from Christchurch, if I remember correctly. And
That's right.
the alleged HAARP-caused earthquakes have a exact depth of 10 kilometers. Like, earthquakes have all sorts of different depths. You know, they can be very shallow, they can be very, very deep. But the HAARP installed earthquakes seem to happen around about the 10 kilometer depth mark, which was exactly the same seismographic activity that was recorded on the date of the Christchurch earthquake. And indeed, a email from Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton at the time said something along like, and Christchurch earthquake on cue.
That's the one, yeah.
So it's coming to the point where you understand now that, for example, I'm on the street, can I stop that airplane from doing that terrible activity? I mean, the CIA isn't financing people and like they did the Mujahideen in the Afghanistan war against Russia, giving them Stinger missiles and with an invisible enemy. Okay, back in the day, the tribes people of the Caribbean were not actually capable of seeing Columbus's ships. They had not the imagination that such a thing could exist, and it was indeed the shaman of those tribes in those islands who could see them and taught other people to see them as well. Only then could they respond and react to them, and I believe we're fulfilling a very similar role to those shaman. Not to say that we're very shamanistic in any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I am charming, but I'm not a shaman. So where are we going now? Where can we make the most impact in the remaining internet days that we have of even vestiges of free speech left? One day, talking about geoengineering might become one of those censorable topics, like that other topic and that other one. You know what I'm talking about, don't you guys? So what do you think is the future for this? Are you just going to keep plugging along and doing what you're doing and hope that one day you contribute to the overall human goal to really see the chemtrails for what they truly are?
Yeah, for the moment, I'm happy to just keep waking people up. And what I have noticed over the last several years is that when I started out, you know, you could just say anything out there. Well, you couldn't, because somebody would go, conspiracy theory. And you just be like, oh, geez, you know, and you say something, so you try something else, and they go, conspiracy theory. Try something else, conspiracy theory, and you're like, okay, I think I better try a different chat group. And so you block a couple of people, you move to a different chat group, you try conspiracy theory, but over the years it's changed, and there has been a huge change, and I don't know whether you're aware of it or whether you've sort of noticed that as well, or whether other people have, but I sure have noticed that there's much, much less of this conspiracy theory. Of course, you know, it's problematic when they all come true, you know, because that sort of downplays the whole idea of it just being a conspiracy theory. But and it also helps the whole cause, because we can actually go, well, yeah, it did come true. So, but there's a lot less people who are saying things like that now. In fact, it's actually becoming the minority rather than the majority.
The United States mainstream media was assessed, I forget which agency did it, but they determined that 70% of people did not wholeheartedly believe anything the media said. All right, 30% of people still did, and approximately 30% of people literally did not believe a thing they said. Right, some people needed a little bit of convincing. They might question it or whatever, but 30% believe everything they say, 30% believe nothing they say, and the rest remain to be convinced. All right, which is a record low in the history of American media, where trust for the media used to be up in the high 80s back in the 1960s and 50s and things of that nature. Interestingly enough, that's about when Operation Mockingbird came in and the CIA started buying out and paying off and placing agents into almost every single news industry in the effing world. And now we're more in the case where Russia was, where people would hear the news and they would laugh. All right, I got into that state in 2012 where I was listening to an Obama speech or something like that. You know, I'm going to end these illegal no-end in sight wars, and I'm like, you know, you just can't stop laughing at the ridiculous nature of what these people promise to deliver that you know that they're obviously not going to. And this is the point. There are still going to be people who are incapable of discerning truth for themselves, like they actually don't possess the faculty to be capable of it. And
I wanted to say something on that, and that is that I don't know if you know about this as well, but a number of years ago there was a survey done, like quite a significant survey, and they discovered that if somebody put like a very pertinent comment under an article on the net, that it would negatively change the whole swing of the article to that pertinent point, and so they would lose their article kind of what the impact of it. And it's funnily enough, pretty soon after it happened, all of the media started knocking off any comment threads under their articles. And it happened quite specifically at that time. It was like you used to be able to go onto their own websites and go, oh yeah, comment on stuff or whatever, right? And you know, such shady organisations as News Hub. Sorry, I had to put that in there. News Hub, the one that went down, that sank around the same time as the Titanic. But they
don't you mean the Atlantic?
Yeah. Anyway, they used to put those comment things underneath, and you could just comment away on them. And then when that survey came out, and they realised that this was actually getting quite harmful to them, they actually cut out all the comment sections, and so we couldn't comment anymore.
Yes, and that's about the time when their revenue slumped to a point where they had to ask the people who were no longer allowed to comment to donate to them because we were helping to give them a voice, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's just freaking ridiculous, and I'd be remiss to say if I didn't say that the media is completely controlled in some areas. Every now and again, though, you get these little grains of truth buried within the lies, and that's how the media maintains their quote-unquote credibility. Right? Journalistic integrity, credibility. I remember I was on a show one time and I was trying to tell these other talk radio show hosts, people who haven't had the luck that I've had, frankly, to be mentored by some of the best people in the American talk radio business, that you need to be able to confirm things by doing the actual process of journalism, asking who, what, when, where, why, and how, and then getting 3 separate sources who are completely unrelated who say the exact same thing about the topic that you're researching. Then you have to do that before you even go public with what your findings are. And these people on this broadcast laughed at me as like, that's all the mainstream media stuff. And it was like, whatever. Yeah, I said, yes, but you're making one critical mistake here. And they go, yeah, what's that? You're assuming that the mainstream media practices journalism. They don't. They practice propaganda and the manipulation of emotion and general feelings in order to override the prefrontal cortex that does your logical, black and white thinking. That's basically it. Where they go for your emotional centres, right? Over here, we've had 63 murders today and 8,500 rapes or whatever. And just to round off the broadcast tonight, here's a fluffy kitten and an even fluffier puppy. And they're best friends. And they're wrestling. They look like two fur coats and a tumble dryer. You see how they do that? They put the image in your mind. You can see it, and that's what they discovered, is that the brain doesn't have any firewalls, particularly when you're in front of a screen of some description that has an appropriate flicker rate. People are like, okay, well, normal film is, say, maybe 25, 26 frames a second or something of that nature, right? But it's the flicker rate of the television that gets you, because if your brain is exposed to this level of flickering, I think it's like 512 refreshes a second, your conscious mind is physically incapable of processing that information. So it lapses back into your beta wave state. This is what activates the mammalian cortex. It does all your emotional, social feelings and things of that nature. So you're not thinking, you're feeling. And that's why when sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had this, you're interrupting somebody in the middle of them arguing with somebody on the internet or something like that, you know. Honey, are you going to come to bed soon? No, somebody on the internet is wrong. And they have this projected transference. So the emotional state that you get into while you are absorbing and being involved in social media and conversations with people, that is not a relevant emotional state to your physical surroundings. And so if you are cut off from that, somebody turns the TV off, you can actually be really psychotic. There was actually a story of this young girl who's been led away from police from her home, and she was crying. She didn't know why she did it. Her parents turned her Facebook off, and she murdered them. She murdered both her parents in less than 30 seconds, okay? You have a 30-second gap where you are stuck in your emotional centers of your brain before it resets, before you can actually start thinking again. And that's where they want us at all times, in a state of perpetual mind control addiction. So that the second your addiction is cut off, that heroin junkie is going to get you.
Yeah, that flickering of the TV, I think I saw somebody like that today, because they were in the car in front of me and it wasn't raining, but their windscreen wipers were going, and I think it was a case of self-hypnotism.
Sorry, say again?
I was driving along, there was a car in front of me. It was not raining, but they had their windscreen wipers on. And they were just on. They just kept driving for ages, and it wasn't raining, and they had their windscreen wipers just going on, you know. And as I say, I think they were just hypnotized by their own windscreen wipers, because they didn't do anything different except drive in the same direction, even though it wasn't raining, windscreen wipers on.
Somebody told me the other day, I think this might have been last year, that because of the reactions that people have had to the forced medications that they've been subjected to over the last couple of years, you know how sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling 100%, you might be feeling like 95% or something like that. Maybe if on a really bad day you might be feeling about 10%. Well, apparently some of these people are so sick and so brain damaged as a result of these forced medications that they're operating at minus 5%. As in they're not even capable of doing the job, as in they are even worse at the job than if the job wasn't getting done and had nobody there, right? And I see that when I'm walking around, just like even going to the supermarket and some of the people there, it's like incompetence is on the rise. And it might be due to ill health effects. It might be to do with mind control. It might be to do with poor diet. It might be to do with propaganda. It could be a combination of all of those. Post-traumatic stress, so on and so forth. So that the entire human race is actually operating at a net negative, right? We're not coming together, we're not making friends, we're becoming isolated, we're becoming fractured, and we're becoming self-destructive as a species.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is part of my interest in waking people up. Even with this, with geoengineering, it gets them to look at something and go, okay, this doesn't add up, that doesn't add up. I'm going to look at that a bit more. Looking is good, being able to observe for yourself is nothing better. But if you're just, being a zombie, if you want to call it that, this is the real worrying, and that's what you're talking about. And when you say a combination, absolutely a combination of things, even down to the nanoparticles that we're breathing in and all the effects those are creating. Aluminium goes straight to the brain, so then you get dementia and Parkinson's and all that. These are diseases that didn't exist before, didn't really, now they've got whole wards of people to filling them up with these particular disabilities.
Yeah, it's becoming a man-made epidemic. Basically, the toxicity of the environment that we are in. Not to mention that, I'm really getting sick of bathing in Wi-Fi. The other night, I turned the Wi-Fi off and turned my phone off, and I actually felt different immediately. I just went, oh. It felt relaxing to not be bathed in Wi-Fi, and I'm not sure if it was psychological or physiological or something like that, but when the Wi-Fi's on, people are tense, man. This stuff is irradiating everybody all day, every day. It's cancer causing, it's mental illness causing, and it's basically something that we're on all the freaking time. We can't help it. So we've become addicted to the methodologies of our own destruction, and we hate people who are trying to save us from destroying ourselves. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so there's a whole subject on this, the cell phone radiation and the effects it's having. There was some research done in Israel by a group of people, and they found that, to put a long story short, that the cell phone radiation steals oxygen from the body. So basically what that can do is thicken your blood, so then you've got health problems and so forth. But in that research, there was a physics professor, electrical engineer, I think he was, but he found that the sweat pores of the body were cone-shaped, and they were filled with the sweat, saline solution, which gives connectivity. And so essentially at the bottom of those sweat glands is your nerve endings, and so you've got a direct antenna all over your body with the sweat glands to actually become not only an antenna yourself, so that you can actually pass it on. This is the whole idea with 5G, is it can pass from person to person to person, but also it's creating harm for your body at the same time.
Yeah, and wasn't it interesting how everybody got locked down and couldn't go outside, except the 5G installation people who were marked as an essential service? Essential for what, I wonder? Because Mark Steele, who's a former electronic weapons designer, worked for the British military, he broke open one of these things and he said that these 5G transmitters are in fact weapons. And the way it works is that if I were to be feeling an emotion, let's say it would be fear or rage or suicidal nihilism after a Justin Bieber concert, whatever the emotional state that somebody could potentially be in, that is associated with a frequency in the brain. And if you are capable of having a device that can generate particular frequencies and modulate those frequencies so that you can change what they are, you have a direct line to the consciousness and perception of the population that are within the area of effect of that weapon.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, and I'm totally on board with that idea. And this is what's of real concern to me, is that we are getting, and you mentioned it before, we're getting down to that lower IQ thing as a society, and people don't have the ability anymore to differentiate necessarily their own thoughts from some foreign idea or some foreign impulse or thought that's coming in. So that's a real worry, because if you can't identify that, there could be a frequency, as you say, of anger come in, and next thing you know, there's people ripping each other out of their cars and having fights on the street or whatever. And do you read about this sort of thing happening? Yes.
You know how you learn something and it puts into context a lot of things that you'd previously learned that you didn't quite understand yet, pretend that one of my mates in Los Angeles during the Black Lives Matter protests was walking around after the protest had come through, and I think he showed us nearly 100 burnt cop cars. Like 100 of them. They're all lined up and stuff like that, just burnt to a crisp in the middle of the street. And it's like, holy cow! And then, after our discussion just now, I'm wondering, were there frequencies that were being pumped out of the lampposts specifically to enhance that rage and violence of the protesters? It makes you wonder about a whole lot of things.
Yeah, and that's what I warned you about at the beginning of the interview, as this is such a big subject. You can get into so many things. I mean, we haven't even talked about, directed energy weapons, forest fires, how forest fires are getting so much hotter because of all the nanoparticles that have been dropped and so forth. I mean, there's just so much to talk about this, because it's just, as you say, an emerging technology, and there are so many parts to it. And we're really sort of sitting here, kind of like we've got this whole technology that's changed the whole planet, and we're like, what's going on around here?
Well, could you elaborate on that forest fire thing? Because they've been all over the news lately. Some people were telling, who was it? I think it was my mate Clint who was telling me about people painting their roofs blue or something like that because they believe that those roofs wouldn't burn down, or something crazy like that. I don't know how much information you have about the recent forest fires in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I know two people who were living within the vicinity, not in a burning area, but they had burning areas all around them. But this idea about the roofs being painted blue is not silly. It's the lasers, the weapons they use do not react on blue, if you like, and so it can be a protective thing. However, even a house with a blue roof, If it's made of other substances and so forth, sure, it could still go. But the US military have been doing, or let me put it another way, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin and so forth have been doing a lot more of research, and Lockheed Martin website is a nice one. I occasionally go to check out to what changes they've made, and about 10 years ago they were advertising on their website that they had been successfully using lasers in the field for the last 20 years, and that has been taken down since, by the way. but they have all kinds of uses for these lasers and so forth, and the use of laser has it got a stumbling block when they found that they would need enormous amounts of power, and it would be difficult to actually produce something that was small enough and mobile enough. But they've kind of overcome that, and Elon Musk helped overcome that with his batteries and so forth. Now you don't need a laser weapon; you just need a Tesla battery. That was a joke. It's an emerging technology. The forest fires, when you drop a lot of aluminium over an area, you've got this huge increase in the heat retention of the forest or whatever it's landed on, and so it makes the burning more intense. You put some wind in there to add to push it along, and it's practically unstoppable. And that's what they found in LA. There were heavy winds in that time. Now, were those winds weather modified to happen at that particular time? You betcha. I mean, I don't have any evidence of that, but I guarantee they were.
That's the problem with becoming a conspiracy theorist who believes that powerful people who have a lot of influence use their power to maintain and grow their influence. Very few things appear coincidental. Hey, they're using artificial technology to influence the forest fires. Did they influence the wind too? Of course they did.
It's got to be that way.
That's why I love this game, man. It just never gets old, because it's what's the old saying? SSDD, same shit, different day.
Yeah, true.
You just get kind of it was funny back in the day when I first started this. The people that I listened to would constantly say things like, "I'm tired of it. I can't stand this anymore." And that was back in the day when we knew a quantum of some of the information that we know now. And some of those people are actually still in the game. It doesn't matter how tired of this you get. It doesn't matter how much of it you can stand. It's a measure of your courage. It's a test of your mettle, I think. Because although a lot of those people are still here, there's a lot of other people who are not. Right? They come into this movement, and their first mistake, a mistake I made myself, is thinking that you can trust everybody in the movement. All right? They say that they're all about truth, therefore they must be a trustworthy person. Not necessarily, guys. All right? There are psychopaths, there are narcissists, there are sadists. You can see them in the chat rooms sometimes, and some of them are even broadcasters. These people have severe personality disorders, and they hurt people in their personal lives because of the way that they live their own life. And when you come into this movement, you think that everybody's good like you. They had a terrible experience, and then they got persecuted, and that made them question what was real, and then they motivated themselves to go and find out what's real. But that's not the process that everybody's been through. Okay? Some people just smell power. And in the world of spreading the truth, which is what religions claim to do. I remember one time I had a comment saying, "Oh, Vinny, you don't know the one truth." Oh, the one truth. Oh yeah, there's only one, is there? And so I googled the one truth, and of course it comes up with a long list of religious websites, all from different forms of religion, who all claim to have the one truth and say that their one truth is the only one truth, and everybody else is just lying to you and trying to manipulate you. All right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a crazed business, and I find it kind of perpetually frustrating that people don't see the dynamic, that they don't know how light and dark work, and that who you were before you come into this movement is still who you are. You have to do the work in order to become a better person. You know, many of us used to be wage slaves of some description who voted for left-leaning parties or right-leaning parties, or supported the police, or whatever the hell. And some of us have grown out of that, but a lot of us have not. And I'm perpetually trying to look for the reason why some people are inherently different to others. Why can they go through such horrible things and not become horrible people and maintain their goodness, their sense of humour, their conscience, while others maybe have gone through horrible things as well and do not retain those things?
All good questions.
What do you feel was your quintessence of this? Because have you had to give anything up in order to do this geoengineering expose career, as it were? Because we had an article from Ralphie from Kiwi Radio in the chat saying that, as you mentioned earlier, 2016, an article from New Zealand Herald saying that you've predicted the Hawke's Bay earthquake. And so that means that you've been doing this since 2012. I've been doing this since 2008. What is it that's different about you and me versus others that have given up?
I hate to use the word truth after you've just said what you've said, but I think that some of us do have that basic desire to just see that the world is a better place, or that there is hope, that there is something we can do about it, there is, that we can turn this around and all of that. And if we don't have that, then we've got nothing anyway.
You're not talking about truth, though. You're talking about faith. The belief that, despite evidence to the contrary, even if there is evidence to the contrary, that things are going to work out.
Hold on, but what I'm talking about there is you could call it the human condition, if you like, but no more. To me, we're all spiritual beings, and so I think that's what I expected, that every other person would be a spiritual being, but there's a lot of extra things that are tagged on to a lot of people, to their personality or whatever, that are negative. And I've grown up where, I've been through some heavy stuff, some things that weren't so good, as I guess anybody has really, but it was always I never had kind of particular hatred of people. I wanted to just have a peaceful world, and a world I thought, hey, we could, really do something. We could really have some fun, some success, and so forth. And the world doesn't seem to want to respond that way. And I'm like, it should be that way. I think it should be that way. I could be wrong.
There's a way that we were brought up, and that's what I was talking to some Australian folks the other day about the immigration in Australia, and how it's leading to a lot of violence and standoffishness, and, you know, quote unquote, the outbreak of racism, which some people might interpret as the outbreak of people actually wanting to preserve their culture from being overlaid by billions of immigrants. So the element that they said there is that when you're raised in a different environment and there's certain consequences to actions that are punished in certain ways, when you go into a new environment and those actions are not punished in those certain ways anymore, you perceive the quote-unquote prey population as being weak and start doing what you want to them. And I don't think I was really raised per se by my parents. I kind of got largely neglected, so I had to find my own way. I had to figure out what was true. I had to figure out what was right by trial and error to a large degree. And I fell back on some of the old principles of knighthood, which was honour, truth, and courage. If you have honour, you don't betray your friends, okay? It is said that your enemies cannot betray you, only your friends can do that. If you have courage, you don't kowtow to evil, regardless of how threatening that evil is. Even if you yourself are inadequate force to overpower it, you still oppose it. And if you have truth, you have the capacity to know what is right, what is correct, and what is wrong, and what is incorrect. And perhaps through various means, those people who have developed at least the recognition of these attributes of what King Arthur in the fables called knighthood, the elements of a knight. We are the ones who start along the path and do not finish until we reach the end. Others don't have those attributes. They don't value those attributes. They haven't really heard about them, and they haven't learned from their own experience the value in them. We are the weak men that was created in a society built by strong men, an easy society where those attributes were no longer really necessary for your survival, whereas back in the day they were. But now you don't need them to survive, and so people have lost value in those principles, I think.
Yeah, there is one I'd like to add to your list of values, and that is integrity. Also, and you know, that's been a very big one for me. Is integrity is being able to say what you see, being able to stand up for what you believe or who you are, and just to do that regardless of whatever, whether it be job loss or you know, or some other threat, to go, well, no, my job is not more important than my integrity. My you know, my position in life is not more important than integrity. You know, integrity is a very, very important thing to me, and I think to others it should be. It's a thing, but it is missing a lot, where people will just go, oh yeah, whatever, and go along with things simply because everyone else is peer pressure or whatever. And you know, so yeah, that's another value that I hold very strongly.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be something that journalists hold in place as well. I always like my journalistic integrity. You know, like my mate Clint from Fire Dragon Chili's, he's very similar to a journalist in that he's very protective of his sources, and we have this relationship whereby he helps me out and I help him out, and we care about each other. And there's something to that where the elements that we're talking about here are universal, regardless of your profession. It's important to have integrity, isn't it? That you are, quote unquote, a man of your word. Because if you can't be, trusted 100% of the time, how's anybody supposed to trust you even 1% of the time?
Yeah, totally.
And sorry, go ahead.
For me, I'm very much what you see is what you get. I don't profess to be perfect in any. I profess to be who I am, and if that's something that offends or upsets or whatever, then okay, that's the way it is. I don't try to be something I'm not, and I really try hard not to be something that is superficial, because the way I figure it, if somebody's going to like me, they're going to like me because of who I am, not because of who I represent myself to be.
Yeah. On that note, give this video a little bit of a like and a little bit of a subscribe, ladies and gentlemen, if you can, please. And if you want the shows to continue into the future, do what people have been doing for the last 17 years for the Vinny Eastwood Show, setting up automatic payments so that every week $1 or $2 comes into the coffers and we're able to pay for all the lighting and the internet and the power and so on and so forth. The bare minimum. I barely go out. I barely do anything. The only thing I'm doing is sitting at home doing the work. All right, guys. That's the thing about this job that I believe it was one of the people from Ground Zero Radio that told me, is that in this area of expertise, in this industry, if you don't learn to quote-unquote tighten your belt and live by the bare minimum of expense, you're not going to continue to survive. And this is what's happened. I've seen, I think in the last 5 years, I've seen 4 very, very big movements come up in the New Zealand Truth movement, far, far larger than anything I've ever had backing me, and all of them have failed. All right? Not only failed in their objective to free New Zealand or provide New Zealand with good alternative media, but they've failed to keep going. Is the thing. You run out of energy, you run out of resources, that kind of thing. We're all very human in that sense. It is quite difficult to hear the truth from somebody sometimes, because your consciousness takes that stuff on board and it hurts you a lot, and you need to be able to recover from it or be able to live with it. If you don't recover from it and you learn to live with it instead, that's still weight on your back, and it's going to infect your thinking. It's going to infect your thought process, I remember one time I was asking for a bit of donations in order to get a new studio computer, because the other one was being taken from me. And I had people saying, go get a job, Vinny. And it's like, well, I've been doing this for 17 years, bro. Okay? And I haven't needed to get a quote-unquote job where I'm doing things that other people tell me to do that don't mean anything and aren't good for the world, just in exchange for money and my time being spent. I prefer spending my time doing that which is good for the world, because I know that what I need, exactly in the amount I need, will turn up exactly when I need it. And that's what happened with very recently. My windshield on my car cracked, and thank you everybody for donating towards that little cause as well. And also thank you Mr. Bushman for giving us a $10 super chat in the YouTube stream here. Thank you guys. Anybody else want to give us a super chat? I'll give you a little bit of a shout out, as well as Hyro and Amos, our wonderful Patreons, have been supporting us. And that is probably one of the most important lessons I've learned, is people care when you're doing the truth. When you do have integrity and when you do care about people, you will get the support that you need to continue doing it, and this is the most important part, if you ask for it. a lot of people do this job day in, day out, needing support, and they're too proud to ask for it. And they may be surprised that people are only too willing to help you. And that's what I'd like to encourage people to do, and let them know that I need their help at this particular point in time with the ongoing costs of the show. So go to thevinnieeastwoodshow.com. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question. And Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news. So getting back to Nigel, dude, 2012 you've been doing this.
Oh, that's just a rough, a rough dig. It's probably gone earlier than that, but
what have you seen and what have you done, and how big of a journey has this been for you, bro? Like, are there any interesting moments in there where they were like, oh yeah, I'm never forgetting that day?
Look, yeah, no, there's too many to even mention. I think that earthquake thing was pretty interesting. I got a couple of death threats back then. That was interesting. Took it to the police. They weren't interested. Yeah, they said, "Oh, it's probably overseas." I knew where the guy was, making them from, and no, we're not interested.
You know how our police are just generally not interested when, like in general, they just ain't interested, bro. I don't know. There's just little curiosity. It's like, hey, wait, aren't you guys supposed to be investigators? No, we don't get trained in investigation. Oh, okay. Did you get trained into how to handle your weapons properly before you start using them on a defenseless public? No, not really. Okay. Do you get trained in psychology? No. Criminal psychology? No. What do they train you how to do, bro? Or march in formation mostly, and how to repeat legislation and take down people's names in all capital letters when we give them fines. That's basically all they teach you? Yeah, mate. The New Zealand police now suddenly makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Where did I learn that? Did I make that up? No, it's actually former police officers that I've had on the show telling me that. Right? These are the people who enforce the policy. They're policy enforcers. And also, thank you, Amos777, for sending me $7. Cheers, brother. Thank you so much. Everybody, give his little super chat a like there on the chat. This is good. We're doing a new show time now. Normally it was like at midday on a Monday, Nigel. So there's who was it that told me this? I can't remember who said this, but it seemed very insulting. It's like, Vinny, only the bums would be, who are sitting at home would watch you. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we've got some working people on the stream today. Thank you very much for joining us. So it's the problem with longevity. Do you ever need to take a break from putting out this information, or is it just kind of like, is it easy? Is it emotionally draining?
I guess I've conditioned myself on a thing. Sometimes I do take a break, but it's very rare. I just keep on going with it because it's just too interesting. I guess that the thing is that I get a lot of comments of people going, yeah, good on you for keeping going, or, we really like that particular post or something like that. And it makes me feel, okay, how can I give this up when there are people who are waking up, when there are people who are kind of like suddenly starting to change their life for the better, in my opinion, because they started questioning things and looking at things. That to me is just, I can't step away from that. That's my lifeblood, if you like. That's what I feed on, is like, that idea, or that thing that people are changing as a result of what we're doing.
Yeah, I've had feedback like that, and a number of times people have told me that that they were going to commit suicide before starting to listen to my show, right? Like, everything seemed dark, everything seemed miserable, they felt totally alone, they felt really misunderstood, they felt persecuted and unloved and left out in the cold. And this show, you know how, like, sometimes when you're really down in the dumps and you got things really, really bad in your life, but then somebody else tells you what's happened to them, and you're like, oh man, thank God my stuff happened to me. You know, you start to value that.
I'll tell you a funny story. Is that after the Christchurch earthquake, I made another post that was like, well, there could be something like an earthquake in Gisborne. And this sort of went, like, because I'd been saying the thing about Christchurch earthquake, people were paying attention. And what happened is there was a news article on TV1, like their evening news, and people were queuing up at gas stations, and they didn't know why. There was these whole queues at gas stations in Gisborne. And so they went and interviewed somebody at a gas station live on TV1 News, and they said, "Why are you here?" And they said, "Because of Nigel." And they go, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, Nigel said there's going to be an earthquake, and so we're here filling up with gas." And anyway, so that actually went out on 6 o'clock news or whatever. And then I got all these responses of people, because there was no earthquake happened, right? And people were going, you're a fake, there wasn't any earthquake in Gisborne and all of this. But amongst all of that, I got a whole heap of emails and messages of people saying, thank you so much, because a couple of days after that their prediction, there was a power cut in Gisborne that lasted 3 days, and so nobody had any power whatsoever. But all those people who had listened to my message had gone out and bought gas cookers and so forth, and so they were all prepped up. And they said, "Oh, we got extra water, and we bought a gas cooker, and we did fine. Thank you so much."
Oh, that's cool, man. I like that. That's funny. Even when the prediction goes wrong, it can still help people out. Well, the thing is, you can't go wrong by telling people to be prepared for a disaster, just in general. You know what I'm saying? Because even though some disasters are, predictable, technically, in general, they're not. And disaster preparedness, relief. There was somebody I was talking to a number of years ago, and at the time, there was this big kerfuffle about a possible 500-foot tsunami that was going to hit New Zealand or whatever. And they'd been talking about it for weeks. And I said to him, what good has that done to you, talking for several weeks about the possible tsunami coming to you? I mean, what could you do to really prepare for a 500-foot wall of water washing over you? And this lady said to me, "Oh, well, we're pretty high on the cliff here, so we might be able to get..." You're missing the point that I was trying to get across, is that how does it occupy your consciousness? Are you sitting there arguing with yourself and worrying, that kind of thing, or are you actually doing something about it? Did you get your boat ready? In the Noah's Ark sense of the word. No, they didn't. And this is the difficulty with the 24-hour news cycle, that people just get sucked into whatever the big news story of the day is, and I haven't done that for quite some time. Because I recognized relatively early on in my career that constantly staying up to date with everything that's happening today and listening to the predictions about what's going to happen tomorrow, I wasn't actually able to affect the outcome. I was just a receiver. I was not a creator. And that's what I encourage people to do, is as soon as you've learned enough about any subject, you don't necessarily have to keep learning about that subject per se. What you really need to be doing is putting that knowledge into practice. Otherwise, that knowledge becomes the very definition of knowledge you don't use, which is where we get the term useless knowledge.
Yeah. Look, I can think of a few people, even just off the bat, that have I've been in touch with for years, and they have in that time come completely off all medication that they were on and shifted to healthy products and so forth, and as a result they're better off in their life. They've re-established a better life for themselves. So when you see that sort of thing, you think, okay, good job done,
Yeah, and somebody said to me, that's why we do it. And I've been questioning it lately, because I've been doing this basically my entire adult life. Why am I doing it? Why am I doing it? And other people say that it's about the other people, like when people thank me, when they donate to me, when they help me out, when they introduce me to someone. That's not why I do it either. It isn't about what comes to me, and it isn't about what comes from me and goes out and gets used by people to help improve their lives. It's neither of those things, really. It's because I believe that what I'm doing is the right thing to do. So regardless of the consequences, or even lack of support in some cases for doing the right thing, that really doesn't matter to me, because I don't think that doing the right thing needs any justification.
Yeah. No, true. I mean, one shouldn't live to be liked or admired, or the main thing is, are you doing what you should be doing, and is it helping things? Is it improving things for yourself or other people, and so forth?
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits that people can get from listening to this show, including having the will to live. Because honestly, that's something that really perplexes me, and I find difficult to really talk about and think about, is when people have actually gotten to the end of their tether and they're taking their own lives. And a lot of the time. Not all the time, of course, but a lot of the time these people have gotten themselves onto pharmaceutical medication, where had they read the side effects, okay, why are you taking this medication? Oh, I feel a little bit sad. Oh, okay, why don't you take this stuff that can make you kill yourself or turn you into a psychotic killer, or deactivate your kidneys from working, or give you liver failure? Why don't you take that because you're a little bit sad? And that doesn't seem like a logical thing to do to me, and people get given this advice, and their advice is to turn away from your trauma, to ignore it, and anesthetize yourself so that you can survive it. Well, the problem is, the lot more you anesthetize yourself, obviously the less you feel, but the less you feel, the less things are real. Okay, and I think that's what's happening. Maybe it's one of the central challenges of our modern digitized society, is that many of us don't feel like we're real people, that we don't feel like we actually have real lives. It's all fantasy. It's all an experience that we're having. There's nothing grounded, and we crave importance and we crave struggle, and when that struggle isn't there and we don't rise to it, if it is, the meaning of the existence of your life basically you have to sum it up as pointless suffering, right? And people don't want to suffer needlessly and pointlessly. They want to suffer for good reasons. They want to they want to sacrifice of themselves so they can actually accomplish something that is worthwhile, something they could tell the grandkids about, as the old saying goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all about having fun.
Because it's the whole idea behind having fun. I remembered this about World War One. The most popular radio broadcasts during World War One were not the news broadcasts. They were actually the comedies that were being broadcast over the wireless at the time. These were the most popular things. So when people are suffering, and I don't know about any of you out there listening, but you're probably suffering to some degree, maybe to similar degrees that I am, from various different factors and things that some are within your control, some are not. And the way that you get through that, the way that you cope with it, is with humour, right? It doesn't matter how dark things get, you're still able to make light.
Oh yeah, I have to agree with that. I enjoy my humour, and I enjoy British humour is really, really good because it's very clean as well, or historically at least.
Yeah, I remember this joke. There were two cannibals eating a British comedian, and first cannibal says, "Does this guy taste funny to you?" And the second cannibal replies, "Bit dry," because you see, British comedy is has a dry wit, ladies and gentlemen. You see. Now, is there anything you'd like to actually advise the listeners? Like, how do you do what you do specifically in terms of the technical aspect? So if somebody wanted to do what you're doing, what would they need? Where would they begin?
Well, what I do I don't know what, like to find what's going on, to see what's going on in geoengineering, or
yeah, because you're spreading the truth. Obviously, you're getting it from somewhere and you're putting it out somehow.
Yeah, well, you can. There are a couple of pages. I have weather modification, and my page. I don't even know what the name of it is. Weather modification, something or other. There's another one, Geoengineering Watch New Zealand. You can join those groups and you can find information on those as to what's going on, and articles about what is being done and so forth. You can go onto the Met Service and other websites and look at the radars and observe anomalies on the radars if you want to do that yourself. And you can actually see what's going on. You can see if it looks like there's something odd going on there, for yourself.
And what have your challenges been in order to put the truth out? Like, some people are like camera shy, and it took them some convincing to get themselves on camera. You obviously don't have that problem now. Was it ever a problem?
No, I've done a lot of live lecturing in my life, so I don't have a problem with that.
So, Geoengineering Watch New Zealand, and this reminds me of Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org, and I've had a lot of very prominent chemtrail activists on the show over the years, and Dane he has this very emotional connection to the land. Like, he actually loves it. He loves the planet. He loves the trees, the animals, the streams, the birds, the bees. And I got this impression from him and from a lot of the guests on this show that the reason why they do what they do and suffer through what they suffer through, it isn't because of the hate of what's being done that they're opposing. It's actually the love of the things that they want to protect.
Well, there's another aspect that I like to sort of bring up, and that is going back to those values that we were talking about, integrity and so forth, that at least if somebody's dropping chemicals all over me, I want them to admit and tell us what they're doing and what their intention is and so forth. And if the government are ignorant of it, I expect that they should be looking into it and taking our communications seriously enough to look at it. That would be integrity for the government, but when you see that you write letters to the government or you raise your head about it and they try to just shut you up or call you a conspiracy theorist, it does make you a little bit suspicious, because they're not answering the question. They're not they're denying it. They're saying, oh no, there's nothing there to look at. Well, no, we can see there's something to look at. We've established that, but when the answers aren't forthcoming, there's a lot of other issues that get raised, like, for example, if the government don't know about it, then isn't that a security issue for New Zealand? Doesn't that mean that we're not actually protecting our skies properly if this is happening and they don't even know about it?
Oh, the question is whether or not they do know about it, but whether or not they filter it down and let all the bureaucratic people on the lower rungs of the ladder know about it, or whether or not it's kept secretly. I love that term, bro. National security, and I love it how in the United States, and you see it in movies and stuff like that all the time, you've got critical information that people frickin' need to know. And they're going to die unless they get this information. Oh, but sorry, that's classified. National security. So you're saying that the nation's security is more important than the people that are in the nation that comprise it? Right? It sounds like a bullshit excuse to me for people who want to keep things secret so that they can wield the power of that knowledge over those other people that they've kept in the dark.
Oh, no, it's not like that at all, because they know, it's okay for them to know about it, and they know that we would just collapse and into a heap if we found out what they knew, because it would be too much for us. But it's not too much for them, you see. So they shoulder it for us. They take it.
Oh, aren't they being so sweet? Really, just like, come on, man. Yeah, and again, it's just all scamography. There's a way that scams are run, and the government is adept at following that exact line. Aren't they? At all times. I don't understand what the exact thing about it is, but there was this CIA contractor who used to teach agents how to spot somebody who's lying. And she had this woman who had been accused of embezzling money from the company that she was working for. And the generalized idea behind spotting lies, people go, oh, she might have twitched at the wrong time, or there might have been something in the body language, or maybe her story didn't check out or something. It's like, no, it's actually none of that. The key behind lies is to try to convince the person that you're lying to that you're not the kind of person who would do that kind of thing. You see, you give yourself a little bit of a thing like, oh, I remember when this terrible thing happened to me, and so, yeah, I know never to embezzle money, like, that way you draw suspicion away from you yourself, the subject, and you're not necessarily lying per se, directly. You're not saying, no, I didn't steal it. You're trying to convince people that you're not the kind of person who did. And that's what's really difficult. And Ralphie mentioned gaslighting. That is a real... Do you know much about gaslighting, Nigel? Could you explain it to the audience if you do?
You know what? It's always been a term that every time it gets mentioned, I go, now, what the hell is... I think it's... because to me, I don't get into the... You know, I say something as it is, and I don't get into analysing too much the psychology of what's behind a comment. If somebody says something crappy to me, it's something crappy. So, but I guess it's sort of making a person seem that their idea is ridiculous and nothing because nobody thinks that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like you try to not piss the person off with your lie. What you're trying to do is make them question their own reality with the lie. Okay? Yeah. What you saw, you didn't see. What you heard, you didn't hear. I remember one time, who was it? It was the Minister of Health or something. I was asking him a question in a political meeting. I can't remember exactly what it was about it, but it was the response, right? I was talking about how fluoride was made from the phosphate fertilizer industry, to which he replies, no, it's made by the process of crushing rocks. And I go, did you know that the phosphate fertilizer industry extracts their phosphate fertilizer by crushing rocks? Okay? It's just the thing. They're agreeing with you, but they're disagreeing with you, right? And in so doing, your reality becomes sort of distorted. And Kiwi Radio, Ralphie on here, he says in the chat room, gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where one person causes another to doubt their own perceptions, memories, or reality, often leading to a confusion and a loss of self-esteem, right? And this is how it works politically speaking, because imagine if you had a population who you wanted to vote for you who doubt their own perception, who doubt their own memories, who doubt reality itself, and are remarkably confused and have low self-esteem. Do you think that bunch of people would be a terrible threat to you if you were a bad guy? Probably not, because they're all wrapped in that little circle of perception management, aren't they? Yeah. That's the thing. It's like an abusive relationship with a partner. And I've been in one. Trust me, folks, you don't want one of those happening to you. Man, like as confident as I am, I lost all my self-esteem, guys. All of it. It was just gone. And that's what that whole bunch of gaslighting, and you know, if you say something they did to you really hurt your feelings or something like that, they go, oh, that's just your ego, you're projecting, and that pisses you off even more and makes you feel crazy. And it's like, man, this is exactly what voting is like. And, oh my God. Nigel, we've come very dangerously close to the end of the show. We've got about 2 minutes on the clock here. Do you have any final words of wisdom, sage advice, or encouragement? Something to give courage to the people as we end this broadcast tonight.
Wow, that's a big call. Look, as I said, things have changed a lot over the years. And I've got a lot of years to look at how it has changed. But there are a lot more awake people in New Zealand, and so often you could be in a room where nobody's talking about it, but they're all watching the same group chat that you're on, and they actually think the same way as you do. And you know, broach the subject with somebody someday, because you might find that the people you're scared to talk to are actually on the same page.
Indeed, Nigel, thank you so much for your time today, brother. It's been a pleasure and an honour. Thank you so much.
Been great. Thank you.
Cheers, brother. We'll see you again sometime.
Good.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in today. I would like to also thank the people in the chat room. We've got Ralphie and Amos. Amos and Mr. Bushman each gave us a super chat. Thank you, guys. And Ralphie's been integral. But I especially want to thank Cameron Brown on there for letting me know about the mic sensitivity in the beginning of the show, as well as, of course, Craig Power as well. So, yeah, thank you, guys. You're keeping me on track. You're keeping me doing what I should be doing and getting the show up to some sort of reasonable standard of quality. I have been having some gargantuan technical issues recently. I really have. Well, with that being said, thank you very much to everybody. Please go to the Vinny Eastwood Show.com. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, and Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news. And you can click on the latest tab in order to be able to see any of the new shows and things of that nature that we've put up. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, on Twitch and YouTube, and hit the little bell notification on the YouTube if you want to subscribe as well, so that way you get the notifications. Best way is, of course, becoming a Patreon, because every time I put up an archive on the Patreon, it actually does send you an email notification of that, so you don't really necessarily have to check things. It just gets emailed, directly to you. Right, well, that's the show for today. Thank you very much, everybody, and I just want you to realise that you are truly exceptional in this society. Okay? To have your intellect, to have your skills, to have your attention and things like that, it's very rare, and all the people who listen to the show are like that, and I really do love that about you. And my one concern is that sometimes you don't give yourself enough credit. You don't give yourself enough credit for who you are. You don't give yourself enough credit for the things that you've been through. You don't give yourself enough credit for the things you do. And maybe, just maybe, you deserve to give yourself a little bit of credit from time to time. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again shortly.
Gentlemen, I've brought you here to discuss the Eastwood problem. It may be necessary to penetrate the Vinny Eastwood Show. The Vinny Eastwood Show. Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, I've been working on a new Vinny scene. I think that might be the kind of penetration we need.
The Vinny Eastwood Show. Sundays, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Live on Ground Zero